Hello, everybody. It's your good friend, Spider. See, I realized at the very last second if I said buddy after everybody, it was going to be weird again. So I said friend. But I'm your buddy. I'm your guy. I'm not your buddy, guy. Who remembers that bit? Starting off pretty good. I have to apologize again. Because, again, I'm late by a day. I got so caught up in a lot of other stuff last night that I completely missed that I was supposed to record this episode. And since my episodes aren't done way in advance, my episodes are done kind of in the spur of the moment. They're scheduled, but without a lot of extra time in between. Because I don't do extra editing, I don't do anything special beyond just recording it and then releasing it for authenticity. So I didn't have it ready. I know some other people, they'll do blocks of episodes and then release them over like set periods of time, which I think is disingenuous. I think having a good conversation and a good discussion with people, like this is how I feel this is supposed to be, should be organic to the point where you can just do it spur of the moment. And I know there's a lot of shows that do pre-recorded episodes over long stretches of time, and that's fine. But I would rather not. I'd rather keep the authenticity, the DIY punk rock kind of deal where I just pick something and I just talk about it. Now, that's not to say that I don't have notes. The last few episodes I've had notes to try to make sure I remember enough of what I'm talking about if I'm talking about things from the past. Because if I'm not talking about a modern topic, I'm talking about things from my past. And with the relationship episode, I had to go back and remember how many relationships I've had that have classified as relationships. And I did leave a few things out. There are some things from that list that are private for me. Some things that are special that I didn't want to talk about because they meant something to me in certain periods of my life that were different than what I listed. And with my jobs list, I had to make a list of the various places I'd worked at and remember all the jobs that I've had, which haven't been a lot, but it was substantial enough. So I have notes for this episode as well. This is kind of an insight into my process. I have a bit of a process. And I can't do things too far in advance, because if I do that, I might get off of the schedule. I might not get things where they need to be. So this show benefits from me being able to just pick something, have a couple of notes to jog my memory, and for me to just talk about things. And pardon me, my throat's being how it's being. I know nobody wants to hear me clearing my throat constantly because that's not fun. And if I ever did edits on my episodes, then an editor would cut that stuff out. Because, who wants to listen to that? But this is, like I said, authenticity is what separates me from some other shows out there. So now that long-winded initial explanation is finished, on to the weather. You always want to tune into my weather reports, don't you? Everybody expects my weather reports. If I don't make one, people are like, what's the weather like in Ohio? I mean, what if I don't know? Maybe I'll be there next week and I won't know what the weather is like. I doubt it. Maybe you don't care. But it's something to start off with. It is something to start with. Also, spur of the moment, I have to point out that as I'm recording this right now, the time is 12:34 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Why is that significant? Because it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 12:34. And that number comes up a lot for me. I always tend to see the time every time it comes up at 12:34. I never miss it. I might miss 7:01 or 2:27 or 9:30. I might miss things like that, but I will always notice when it's 12:34, either PM or AM. 1, 2, 3, 4. What do those digits add to? They add to 10. How does that distill down in numerology? To 1. Does that matter? I don't know. But it's interesting to me. It's a pattern I've noticed. Moving on. It's cool outside. It's cool. And I don't mean cool like some guy in sunglasses and a leather jacket from the 70s. Fonz kind of cool. Like, hey, kind of thing. That's showing some of my age here, I guess. But it's getting colder. This week is going to have lows in the 30s and 40s and highs mostly in the 60s and possibly 70s, which means I have to get my various cold weather preparations started. I have to make sure all of the space heaters are in good working order in case I need them. Usually they're supplementary because the furnace has a history of being pretty good and then having seasons where it's just like, nope, I'm broken. You have no idea what part is broken. You have to research and play around. I've fixed multiple parts, or replaced multiple parts on my furnace, and I feel pretty good about being able to do so without having to call somebody to take care of it for me. So I'm assuming it's going to be in pretty good shape. Probably in the next week or so, I'm going to test fire it, and it's going to spew up a bunch of dust and things, because as it sits, it collects dust and whatnot. So I'm going to test fire it and make sure everything's in good working order. Make sure it's the blower motor is still working, because the blower motor is the next thing I think that's going to go out. I've replaced the ignition switch. I've replaced the thermostat. I have replaced the wiring. I've replaced the starter motor, which is connected to the ignition switch. There's so many different intricate pieces. I've replaced, I think, the condenser. So many things in this furnace I've fixed. And it worked flawlessly last year for the most part, with only a couple of minor hiccups. But I think the blower motor is starting to go, and any day now in the season, it's going to go out, and I'm going to have to replace that, and that's a big job. So I got to test fire it and make sure that it's still going to work for this season. Pardon me, excuse me. Ugh, that must be unpleasant to listen to. I apologize. If you hear a lot of jingling in the background and a lot of running around, we have kittens. I don't know if I mentioned it on the last episode or two, how we rescued some kittens from where my wife works. I'm pretty sure I did. But they're out of their little quarantine stage. They've been to the vet. They've had all their vaccinations and shots. And now they're free to roam the house. And roam they do. And right now, this is late. They're night cats, so they run amok about this time, and that's what they're doing. They're playing with each other and running all over the place. So if you hear the jingling and you hear all that, that's them. They have jingle bells on their collars, so I can keep track of where they're at to see if they get into something. Because my house is not kitten-proof, because all of our cats have been adults for long enough that we got complacent. And when we got these guys are only a month, 2 months old? 2 months old, maybe? If that. and they get into everything. If you know, you know. If you're a cat person. So, on to the episode. We spent 10 minutes just rambling. On to the episode. What are we going to talk about tonight? I'm going to talk about family trips and vacations. And I talked about this briefly because those shows are shorter and they're more condensed for kids' attention spans. I talked about this on my family-friendly show, which is Let's Talk About This, which hasn't had an update in a while. I know I need to do more for that. But we're going to get into more, we're going to dig into it more on this show and get into some more adult. I mean, I've never been on like an adults-only vacation. Like, I've never gone to like a nudist colony or a wellness retreat or anything like that. So it's not going to be that kind of thing. It's just we're going to be talking more like grown-ups with this episode than I did with that. And we're going to expand on some of these topics a little bit. So if you've listened to that already, that's fine. But you'll hear more stuff than you did then listening to this episode. Vacations are kind of an interesting subject for me. Because when I was a kid, of course, and not every school system does this, I understand. Some schools do things quarterly, so you have quarterly breaks, but you go to school year-round, I guess. My schools, when I grew up, always did. You went to classes a certain number of months, and then you had summer vacation from June through August. And you went back to school in September. And you were out of school like the first week of January. Not January, I mean the first week of June. My bad. Not January, June. So you had the 3 summer months to be on summer vacation. And sometimes we would go on vacation as a family when I was a kid. We went places. We went to theme parks or different places. And I remember as a kid, sometimes that could be miserable. Sometimes, because there were 4 of us kids squeezing in the back of a vehicle on the way to some long-distance place that my folks wanted to go to. And we would stay in a motel or a hotel or whatever when we got there. We went, I remember in my mom's Blazer, the 4 of us kids would try to squeeze in the back. Oh, don't throw that on the floor. Oh, you kids. My bad, I had to walk away from the microphone for a minute. Kittens knocked my daughter's tablet onto the floor. It's going to be that kind of an episode. But I remember us being crammed into the back of my mom's Blazer. It was an old style Blazer, so it was kind of big and boxy still. It was 80s. Early 90s. And so it was 2 kids to a seatbelt. And we were all pretty thin. We were all lean kids, so we had like bones all over the place. We had hip bones and elbows, and I remember my hip bone just grinding up against my sister's hip bone. I don't want people to take that the wrong way. No, okay, let's get away from that idea. But just sitting there for long hours at a time, really uncomfortable. I would take first my cassette Walkman with headphones to listen to cassettes, and then later I would take my first portable CD player, take that along. And we went to a few different places. I have vague memories of some of these places. Now, I did have video. Of a couple of our vacations, but the video on my phone, I was trying to move them to the memory card because I got an SD card trying to save space on the main phone's memory, and the video got corrupted. I have to see if I have a younger sister who originally gave me the video because she managed to recover them from old VHS tape, because back then you took video on VHS tape with a big handheld, giant, shoulder-mounted camera. My dad had one. And so she converted it to digital, and she sent me copies, and my copies are all corrupted. I have to see if she still has those available. I hope she does, because mine are bad, and I don't want to lose them. But we went to a few theme parks. There was one that was themed after Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, so it had a trolley and it had all the characters and things of that nature. We went to a fort, a Revolutionary War fort somewhere. It wasn't Gettysburg. It was something else. We went to someplace, and so that was neat. My dad was into historical stuff like that. We've been to SeaWorld a few times back in the day. I don't know too many SeaWorlds that are still in existence. Is it still a thing? I don't know. So, the big trip that I do remember a lot of was Niagara Falls. We went to Niagara Falls when I was a kid. And we went to the Canadian side, so we crossed the border. Now, we had rescued a kitten who became my older sister's cat. And she ended up, when she grew up, she had a bad attitude, and she got really fat. She was a huge cat with a bad attitude, and she was grouchy all the time. But she was my older sister's cat. At the time, she was a kitten. We rescued her from somewhere outside because we had a lot of cats that roamed the farm area around my folks' house, because they basically had farmland that was inherited from my grandfather. Not inherited, but when they moved to Kentucky, my grandparents, they gave my dad the land and things. I don't know if he ended up buying it or if it just was passed down or however it worked out. I don't know the financial details, and I don't think that's really necessary. But we had a lot of cats, a lot of barn cats and things, and we rescued one, this kitten. And she was too young to be just left at home while we went on vacation, so we smuggled her into Canada in a shoebox. And we got to the border where they have to ask you, okay, what's your business? What are you doing? It was different then than it is now. You know, the restrictions back then were not huge. It was still going to a different country. But, you know, it wasn't like you didn't have to get full search and your vehicle torn apart and all this other kind of stuff like you kind of do now with some places. Post 9/11 stuff, right? So, but we got to the border and they still had stuff about you couldn't just bring animals back and forth willy-nilly. It wasn't, you know, a thing you were allowed to do. And we get to the border and we're waiting in line to go through and to have our passports checked because my parents had to have passports. We didn't have to as kids. That's how different it was. You didn't have to have passports for everybody. And the kitten started crying. And we're like, no, be quiet. Don't draw attention because you weren't. But we managed to get through. And she stayed at the motel with food and water and whatnot while we were out doing day stuff. And she managed, and she was okay. And she lived for a long time after that. She grew up to be an adult cat, got really, really fat, really bad attitude. But, that's how it goes. But that trip I remember a lot because I guess I was more aware of things at that time. That was the first major vacation I remember being aware of things. And we went to a lot of places. We saw the falls. We went in the tunnels underneath because you can do tours underneath, and they give you these ponchos that are basically like made out of plastic, like garbage bag material or grocery bag material. I remember making up a silly song about bananas with my older sister because the ponchos were yellow. And we all went to, there was a Madame Tussauds wax museum up there, and all of us kids got afraid at a spot where it was like the Spanish Inquisition and things, so it was all torture devices, and we were all freaked out, and so we had to leave. I don't know, we were kids. I don't even remember how old I was at the time. But I remember that trip. I remember being in the motel, and I remember going and doing some of the activities. The next major trip that I remember going on was we took a vacation. This was before when I was graduated from high school, and I went down on my own to spend 2 weeks with my grandfather. Before that, the whole family, we went down when I was a kid and spent some time down in Kentucky with my grandparents and my aunt and uncle, because I had an aunt and uncle that lived there at the time too. They both live in New York now. Not New York City, but in New York State. My aunt and uncle. But they lived in Kentucky near my grandparents. And so we went and we stayed with them. And we did various things. We went to see things. At the time, I was still super, super afraid of heights. And we did something where we hiked up a mountain, and there was like an overlook, and I couldn't even go towards it. I was frozen. I was like, no, I can't go look at it. I'm over it now. I'm pretty good with ladders, and I'm pretty good with, I can stand on the roof of a house and things of that nature. I can ride an airplane, which I'll get to in a little bit because I did fly on planes later in life, which I'll get to. But at the time, I had a really bad fear of heights and whatnot. After a while, though, we didn't take as many vacations because it got to be expensive and time-consuming, and my mom and dad had to work different, and you guys can't have this. What is this? We don't need that. What are you doing? Sorry, kittens. Had to take away something from them. And as I got into a teenager, I got, of course, as I've mentioned, I got angsty and kind of angry at the world, and I didn't go too many places. So sometimes my family would go on little day trips, and I would stay home because I wouldn't want to go. And I was old enough to take care of myself, and it was just for a few hours in a day. It wasn't like it was, overnight or anything like that. And they would go to different places. They would go to Cedar Point, which is a amusement park, theme park here in Ohio. pretty famous in Ohio. It's in Sandusky, Ohio. A lot of rides, things like that. That comes up later. I'll mention that as a point later on for different reasons. But, and I never liked, I wasn't much of a ride person, you know. I wasn't much for riding roller coasters, didn't care for them, because it does things to my stomach. I'm not afraid of the height and the speed and things of that nature. Because I got over some of that. It's just, it twists my stomach around. I have apparently a sensitive stomach of different areas. Don't go over there. Kittens again. Hold on. Don't go over there. Thank you. You gotta get after them. They're active and they're trying to get behind the electronics and stuff. So, I was never a big person on rides. Just because of my constitution, I suppose you could say. But, there was a time when my mom was involved in some kind of series of conferences. I don't know if they were for church or if they were for something. I don't remember what they were for. And it was in Sandusky, and so we would go out there. The rest of the family would go out and spend the day at like Cedar Point or Put-in Bay. Put-in Bay is apparently a place. I've never been there. My family's all been there, but I've never been there. But once we went out there, and it was raining and it was bad weather, so we weren't going to go to do those usual things, because the one time I was going to tag along, it was bad weather, of course. And me being grouchy, I was like, whatever. So we decided to eat at some restaurant, which was good, and then we went, I don't remember what it was, you know, I just remembered enjoying it. And then we went to the movies, and we watched The Cable Guy, which was a Jim Carrey movie. So my dad thought, oh, this is going to be a comedy because it's Jim Carrey, right? But it's a dark comedy in a way that's not necessarily supposed to be comedy. It's kind of a slightly... It had a nice dark tone, and today, still today, it's one of my favorite movies. It's got a great soundtrack full of alternative people. It's got Toad the Wet Sprocket. It's got Primitive Radio Gods. It's got Jerry Cantrell. It's got so much Silverchairs on it. It's a great soundtrack, and the movie was really good. I was really into it. I got the DVD. I got the DVD. I was so into it. So that trip is memorable for me because of what we did with that. As opposed to actually going to, you know, a theme park and me being kind of like, bleh. When I started dating the girl who I walked for, you know, when I went walking from work across the states to her house after we broke up, my first girlfriend, we went to, I don't remember what, I don't know if it was Six Flags or if it was, I don't know, I don't remember what park it was. We went to a theme park. And of course, I didn't like rides, so I didn't really do much with it. And I was kind of a grump. And we did a few things. We went to, like, there was the pool with the hot tub area and different things. It was all public, a lot of people around. We did the sky gondola sort of thing, which I was kind of okay with and kind of not. So I remember going to that with her. I don't remember much else about it. I know I didn't like it, but she wanted to go, and she wanted us to go, and so we went. The big park thing that I used to do yearly, pretty regularly, and actually enjoy on some level, was a county fair. And this is in the town of Albion, Pennsylvania. And I don't know if it's still as big as it used to be. It used to be big enough, like it drew attention from the neighboring big cities, which were Erie, Pennsylvania, and some of the other places. Like, it was a big deal for being a tiny town. You had decent music, you had rides, you had carnival games, food. But for me, because it was just a short walk, or a shuttle bus if you didn't want to walk. They had shuttle buses from the school parking lot, the high school parking lot, to the fair. Or you could walk there. And when I was in marching band, we would play there every year. There was a parade for it, right? But it was the thing to do when I was going to school there. Like, we always went. Like, my parents would always take us when we were kids. And then when I was old enough to be kind of trusted on my own, I would walk after school to the fair, and then they would pick me up, or somebody would give me a ride home, one of my friends or something, their families. And so the Albion Area Fair, and I always liked going to that because there was food that I couldn't get most of the other time. Like, there was fair food. It was all greasy and whatever, but it was great. You know, as a kid, you don't care about that. You just, oh, this is amazing. This tastes delicious. They had deep fried cheesecake, which if you've never had it before, you got to have it once in your lifetime. Maybe not more than once, because you might get sick. It's not good for you in any circumstances, but it was delicious. And one of the local churches, a Lutheran church, would do hand-cut fries that were just amazing. And they were the church fries. That's what we called them. Church fries. You always got to go down there and get your church fries. But it was a time to go hang out with my friends and do stuff outside of other settings, outside of school, outside of parental stuff. You could walk around, and I got into trouble a few times, got myself, not suspended, but detentioned once or twice. You know, it's what happens. But, and I liked going. I had a good time. When I graduated, and I had reconnected with that first girlfriend, and we were together again, I remember around the time that the fair was when 9/11 happened, and I had just gotten, because you had to sign up. I don't know if it's still a requirement. I know it was when I was a kid. Well, when I was a teenager graduating school, you had to get your selective service card, which is, it gives you a number and it gives you various things in case there's a draft. If there's a war on, then they call you up based on your number on your your selective service card. And 9/11 happened just a couple of days before the fair, and I remember going there and being really just like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen, because now we got this thing and we might go to war with Afghanistan or whoever, and I just got this card, and what do I try to get out of it, because that would be illegal, or do you just go? And I didn't want to go off and fight in Afghanistan. Like, no offense to anybody that did. If you did, by all means, all the respect in the world to you. But I didn't want to. I was not built like that, and I'm not afraid to admit it. Right now, if it happened, and they were like, you're drafted, I'd be like, all right, I guess I'll go. I'm not going to try to get out of it. I'm just going to do what I got to do. I'm not a very patriotic person, particularly, but, you do what you need to do. I don't think they'll take me, though. I'm pretty out of shape, and I'm in bad shape, to be honest. I don't think I'd do well. But at the time, I was fresh out of high school, and I was in probably the best health I'd ever been in my life, and I thought the potential was that I was going to get drafted to go fight in a war. So it put a really weird spin on things. when my daughter was born, I tried to make an effort to take all of us, me, my daughter, and my wife, out to the fair to kind of reconnect with where I had been and meet people that I hadn't seen since school, because I still know people out there. And it'd be nice to see them more often, but it's like a 3-hour drive from here to there. And we went for a few years when my daughter was younger, and she got to ride rides and eat some food and things. And I don't know if she remembers much of it, but it got to be just too much of a trip for just a few hours. And we ended up having arguments every time we went. And that's not because we were having trouble. It was just because it was a long trip. You get crabby. It's hard to find stuff that she can eat, because my wife is vegan, and you go to places where everything's deep fried. It's sometimes hard to find things that are vegan, you know. So I haven't been there for a few years. And I don't know if I'm going to try to go. I missed it this year, obviously. It just kind of snuck right by me. I don't know if I'll try to go next year. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But that was the thing that I would go to. I would go there every year, hang out at friends' houses who were local right there in town, go to my girlfriend's house at the time when she was there, and that's how it was. In the marching band, we had an opportunity where they have a regular yearly thing where high school marching bands can march in a special parade at Disney World. Now, let me look it up. I don't know if it's Disney World or Disneyland. It's in Florida. It's the one in Florida, because you got two. You got one in Florida and you got one in California. So I'm going to look it up for you real quick, because I can never figure out where it's supposed to be. Okay, it's in Florida. Walt Disney World is in Florida. Disneyland is in, I think, California. I think. But Walt Disney World, we went as a marching band. And I'll tell you, this was during the height of my high school angsty days. And I didn't like things like theme parks. I was actively like, I don't want to go. I don't care about rides. I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't want to go. So the marching band announced, yeah, we're going to go. We're going to march. And there was always the opportunity where you could be like, no, I don't want to go. And you could opt out. Right? All three of my sisters were going, because they were all in the marching band, and so was I. And I told my folks, yeah, I don't think I want to go. And my parents, figuring that, oh, well, if the marching band goes, then that's all 4 kids out of the house for a week or 2, week and a half. We get the house to ourselves. We get to have a mini vacation. They told me, you're going. You don't get to stay home. You're going because we're going to have some time to ourselves. All of your sisters are fine with it. They're all going. So you're going. And I was not pleased. I was not pleased. We went on these charter buses that are like Greyhound-style buses. And when we got to Florida, we stopped at there's a part of the road where like you're right next to the beach, and you can kind of park off to the side and just walk right on down where the ocean is. And everybody got off like, oh yeah, it's the Pacific Ocean. It's the Atlantic Ocean. It's fantastic. Let's go. And I stayed on the bus. I did not go. I did not leave the bus at all. I stayed there. I might have had some trail mix or whatever snacks I'd packed. Listened to music. And didn't go. Because I was mad. I was angry. I was angsty. I was not going to enjoy myself on this trip. I was bound and determined not to enjoy myself. And then when it got time, everybody got back on the bus because we had to go to the hotel. There's a couple things that I did do. I sang karaoke in the hotel lobby. I sang New York, New York with a couple of girls that I knew, and then it's something else. I don't remember what I sang. I don't think me and the girl who I don't think I had a girlfriend at the time. I think that girl and I were on the outs during that trip. That was post-breakup initially, before we got back together after high school. So, and she was kind of grouchy with me the entire time because she had to see me. And I was just a jerk the entire time to everybody. Mostly. But, like I said, we sang karaoke, and the group I was with, I wasn't interested in any of the rides we went to. So I don't think I rode more than one ride the entire time that I was there. I think I rode two, because there was one that was like it was like Jurassic Park, but Disney didn't own Universal Studios and things like that at the time. So it was some other off-brand. It was an off-brand Jurassic Park kind of dinosaur ride. I rode that. I rode the Star Wars ride, which is Star Tours, where you're in a thing and it moves around in a theater, so it looks like you're like an IMAX kind of thing. And I was in the Alien Encounter, which now it's been rebranded. It's like a Shrek. It's not Shrek. What am I thinking? It's a Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. It's a Stitch escape scenario. But when I went, it was much scarier. It was just this alien thing in a tube. And you sat in this little amphitheater, and then the lights went out, and you heard a smash, and then they replaced the tube in the middle with like a broken one, and the alien was gone. And they would periodically, like, you were in a harness, like a regular ride, like a roller coaster, but the room didn't move. But the harness would press down on you as if the alien was stepping on the back of you, and then you'd feel like this hot mist would spray from the back of the chair you were sitting in to be like the alien breathing on the back of your neck. It was pretty creepy, which is why I liked it. And we stopped at an Indiana Jones style ride, which I didn't want to go to. I didn't care about it. But I did look at the merch stands, and they had it was a carved from one piece of wood. It was a skull on a stick, like a skull and a spine walking stick, that I thought was awesome. And I was like, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen down here. And I bought it because I had some spending money from my parents for the trip. And I still have it. It's on a cabinet near me right now. I can see it from where I'm sitting. It's dusty. It's broken because it's been broken before and it's been broken again. And I'm going to explain that in a minute. But it's a skull on a stick, and I thought that was the most awesome thing I'd ever seen. So I bought it. I walked around with it for the rest of the trip. I would put hats on it and put a little bow tie on it, you know. Actually, no, one of the color guard girls put a bow tie on it. And it's still there to this day. I haven't removed it. So my group that I was with, because the marching band was broken up into groups, so it wasn't one whole mass of people going to every ride and whatever. That way, it was more manageable for the park staff and for the various minders we had. We had certain parents and various people who'd volunteered to keep track of different groups of us. My group, we stopped at this go-kart thing where you could ride go-karts. And I didn't want to ride go-karts, so I just sat on a bench nearby. Because I was angsty and I was mad about everything, right? So, I'm sitting there with my skull on a stick. And the guy who runs the go-karts, they're all running on their own. And he walks over, he's like, wow, that is really awesome. Where did you get that? And I'm like, it's here in the park. It's at the Indiana Jones ride. And he's like, really? I've worked here for however long, and I've never seen it. That's pretty cool. I was like, yeah, that's cool. So he walks away, does his thing. We go to do more things that day. And it's getting late in the day. We come back. My group wants to ride the go-karts again. So I'm kind of like, whatever. So I'm sitting there on the same bench, watching them do their go-karts, and the same operator is still there. And he walks over. He's like, hey, you were here before, weren't you? I was like, yeah, my group wanted to ride the karts again. He's like, all right, well, that's cool. Have you been on Space Mountain yet? Space Mountain is an interior roller coaster. It's not, you don't have a view of the sky or anything. It's inside of a building, inside of a series of tubes, right? And I'm like, no, I don't think we've gotten it. I don't know how much time we have. We're towards the end of the day. He's like, oh, well, you know what? If you go there, you still got time to ride it. Why don't I give you some guest passes? And I'm like, okay. So he gives me 3 guest passes to Space Mountain for me and 2 other people. And I just ended up picking 2 people that I thought were cool for my group. And he's like, you know what? If I hadn't seen you with that skull staff thing, I never would have thought to give you this. And I was like, all right, that's cool. So that made my trip. And Space Mountain was kind of cool. I did ride that because I got a free pass. I went there with my buddies. And the guest pass at the time was the best possible ticket you could get because it bypassed the regular line. It bypassed the VIP. It got you right at the front instantly. And I'm kind of like, all right, that's cool. So me and these 2 other people from my group, we all rode Space Mountain for free before the end of the day. All because I had that skull thing. And I would later take that to practice and to things like that, and it would become a distraction. They would tell me I couldn't bring it anymore. The school told me I wasn't allowed to carry it around the school because it could be used as a weapon. Like, it's fragile. If I hit somebody with it, it'll break. And one of my color guard girlfriends, not a girlfriend, but like a friend who's a girl, was using it as a baton and tossing it in the air and dropped it and broke it. And another one of my friends, I wasn't around at the time, so I didn't know, but another one of my friends, he was like, oh no, he's going to be mad. So he tried to put a dowel in it and glue it and things like that, which held up for a while. And they told me about it, and I appreciated them telling me about it. It's come apart since, and I could probably re-glue it if I wanted to, but I just haven't gotten around to it, and it's just been stored where it's been safely for the better part of a decade. It's gathering dust. But I still have it. So that's Disney. That was my trip to Disney. The highlight of my trip is a skull stick. A skull vertebrae walking stick. And getting her free ride on Space Mountain. I don't know how many trips I took from then on. The next one that I remember is I talked about this during my relationships episode. I was talking to a girl online, and we had things in common, and we always talked about, oh, maybe one day we'll meet. She lived in California, I lived in Ohio. It was not likely, but we talked about it. And so, let me adjust this. The cat is trying to play with some cords here. I had moved out. I was living on my own in my apartment, the duplex, right? And I scrounged money together, and I was like, you know what? Because this was right after I'd had the issue with the roommate and his girlfriend, okay? And I thought, you know what? I've got enough money. Let me look up flights. And I looked up a round-trip flight for about a week and a half. And I said, why don't I come out? I'd like to see you. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can get something going here. Maybe I'll move out there if it goes well. And she was like, all right, I like that. Let's do that. So I got a plane ticket. I got a ride. And I flew from Cleveland to Chicago O'Hare. Stayed in the terminal. Didn't leave. Walked around for hours while I was waiting for my next flight. And then caught the next flight to California, to San Francisco Bay Area. I got to see, at night it was dark, so I didn't see a lot of it. I saw the Golden Gate Bridge, drove over it. That was cool. But I went out there, and I saw her. And stayed with her and her family for a while. And it was an interesting trip. I went out there all by myself for the first time. I'd never done something like that before, and I feel good about it still to this day. It was my first time on a plane. I'd never been on a plane before. And the service I had let me pick my seat, which I don't know if that's a common thing, or if it was just more common back then than it is now, or if it was ever really common. I didn't fly in first class or anything. It was definitely coach. But I got to pick my seat, and I picked all window seats. So that every single flight, because I had the layover in Chicago and then I had the same thing back. So I had 4 total flights, 2 out, 2 back. I picked all window seats because I knew I'd had a history of being afraid of heights. And I wanted to make sure, you know what? I'm going to make sure I look out this window. I'm going to see how high we are. I'm going to... we're going to be fine. And on the way out there, I talked to some guy next to me. He was like a pastor or some youth leader or something, and we talked about different things. I remember they came around asking if you wanted to have any drinks. And I was 20 years old. I did not have... I had ID because you needed to, but it was a state ID, and it clearly said I was not 21 yet. But they came around asking, would you like water or beer or some wine? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to have some wine. So I asked for some white wine. And they did not check because they assumed if you were on the plane by yourself flying that you were of age. So they didn't check my ID and they gave me some white wine. I didn't get drunk. I didn't, I had one drink on the way out there, and I thought that was awesome. That was cool. So I had one of my first drinks on a plane flying to California. It wasn't, I don't remember it being some fantastic vintage or anything. Wasn't aware of things like that at the time. I'm sure it was something cheap. But they gave it to me and I drank it. I didn't cause a ruckus. I didn't get drunk. I didn't get sick. And so I get to California and I hung out with the girl. And there were a few highlights to that. I mean, we had, full disclosure, we had some good nights that her parents don't know about. We had some good times. We were both of age. It wasn't like we were, there was nothing weird about it. But so it was consensual. But we went to some restaurants. We I remember going to a record store, but it was a used CD store, and being able to find a huge stack, all for dirt cheap, like $1, $2, that kind of thing, of industrial music from like, from Skinny Puppy and who else? God Lives Underwater and a bunch of other, like, just a bunch of stuff. Killing Joke, a bunch of stuff that I couldn't find back home, and I came back with a bag filled with CDs that I couldn't get back home. And on the way out, the last day I was there, her older brother was like, "Hey, do you want to play paintball?" And I'd never played paintball at an official course. And this is what this was. So we rented the gear, rented the weapons, and I played paintball in Napa Valley. And I think I did pretty well. I mean, I didn't do, like, I got nailed several times. The team we were up against apparently were people who were sponsored by the owners of the establishment. The people who ran the paintball course, they were their guys. So they had a bad reputation of when they got hit, if you didn't see it well enough, they would wipe it off. They were a bunch of wipers, is what the term was called. So we lost because they were cheating. But I had a lot of fun. The funny thing was, though, I went straight from there, all sweaty, in the California heat, in Napa Valley. I changed my clothes, didn't have time for a shower or anything, and went straight from there to the airport to fly home. So the person next to me, I'm sure, was not pleased with how I smelled. And there was another point on one of those flights. I don't remember which flight it was. I think it was on the flight out to California. There was some turbulence, which is basically just you're flying through a storm cloud, or you're flying through an air current that's changing with the weather. It's not a big deal. But I was on the window seat, and there was a lady and her husband in the seats next to me. The lady was in the middle, the husband was in the aisle seat. And I remember she got real freaked out about turbulence. She put on the eye cover sleep mask thing, and her hands went out and gripped both sides, both of the arm rests, and my arm was on one of the armrests, and she squeezed it, and she held on and let go. And I'm sure she knew that she was holding on to me, but I didn't say anything. I was just like, whatever. I wasn't like into it, like, oh, hey, there's this lady, and but I was like, she obviously needs the support. I'm not gonna move or tell her that she's grabbing onto me, so that's fine. And by the time I came back from California, the one roommate who'd had the girlfriend next door, who we'd had the issue with, he had moved out by the time I got back, so that solved that problem. And we had another succession of roommates after that all worked out pretty well. So that was interesting. After that, I didn't go on a big trip like that until I was with my wife. We weren't married at the time, but my youngest sister was getting married. And she was getting married in Hawaii. And, of course, the whole family was invited. We were all supposed to be part of the wedding. I was supposed to be on, not the best man, but I was supposed to be on the groom's side. And I didn't know what we were going to do. Like, it was a lot of money. It still is. It's always been a lot of money to go to Hawaii. We took out a credit card. We took out a Discover card, which we're still paying off to this day because we maxed it. But we maxed out the Discover card, and then that was only half of the plane tickets and everything and the hotel to get down there. My parents paid for the other half. So I have to give it up to them. Because I'm sure they're still hurting from all that time. And I appreciate them for that. Because I was set on being like, we're not going to be able to go. And my wife was like, no, we have to go. This is a big deal. Like, when are you ever going to get a chance to go to Hawaii? We got to go. We got to figure it out. So we went. And it's an interesting place, Hawaii. We were in the Waikiki Beach. We were on Waikiki Beach. So we went to all the touristy places. We didn't go, too far off the beaten path. We had a great deal on a hotel. We were really high up. Had a great view of the city. The city never sleeps. Waikiki sleeps for maybe 2 hours between 3 and 5 a.m. in that time. But the rest of the time, it's all lights and people moving and people doing things. And had a lot of meals there. Saw a lot of sights. I climbed to the top of Diamond Head, where there's like an old military base from World War II. You can see a little scout section. If you hear a jump in the audio, I'm going to pause it real quick because I got to hit the restroom. So I'm going to pause it real quick. Okay, for you that was probably like 2 seconds. For me it was several minutes. Anyway, so Hawaii. Went to the top of Diamond Head, went to the fort up there. That was a big accomplishment for me. I got sick with a sinus infection within the first couple days because of the plane, because our seats, I had been right underneath a vent, and while it was kind of nice, it was kept me kind of cool, refreshed. At the same time, the air in a plane, it doesn't come from outside. Like a car's vents, you can have it open to the outside, or you can have it limited to just the interior of the car. A plane doesn't do that. Everything's self-contained to keep the air pressure. So all of the air from everything everyone's been breathing is constantly recycled. And so I got sick from that. So the first half of the trip, I was feeling pretty bad. Not to mention, when we had the rehearsal dinner, myself and the groom and some of the other the guys on the groom's side, we had tequila shots, and some of the appetizers they had there were dairy, and this was before I knew my dairy problems. So, of course, alcohol and dairy don't mix. So we got back to the hotel, and I threw up a lot, which was not pleasant, and then I got sick. So, parts of the trip were not the best. And then I ended up getting my wife sick, and the last half of the first half I was miserable, and the second half she was miserable. But she still had a lot of fun. She was able to go snorkeling. She was able to do different things. She was able to swim in the ocean. So she had a good time. Hawaii's an interesting place. There's a lot of homeless people on the beach in Waikiki. And the impression I got was a lot of them are people who thought, I'm going to leave my boring life in the mainland U.S., and I'm going to go to Hawaii with everything I have left, and I'm going to get a job, and I'm just going to live in paradise forever. And they get there, and it doesn't work out, and they end up with nothing. And they live on the beach with shopping carts full of their possessions, with tents and whatnot, and checking out dumpsters and whatever soup kitchens. There's a lot of soup kitchens down there to take care of the homeless. It was a big issue. And I was surprised at how many there were. And it's a thing that happens. You get down there and you assume things are going to work out, and then they don't. And even though you're in paradise, the weather's great year-round, except maybe for hurricanes and things, you end up with nothing. And so you're homeless in one of the best places in the world. It's crazy. And the weather was great. The weather was... It wasn't too hot. It was always warm with a breeze. There was always a breeze. So you were never too hot. And when it rained, most of the time, it was a nice, warm rain. And it was okay. And so you felt pretty good about the whole thing. We went to some good restaurants. We went to some crappy restaurants. I remember we went to the only Mexican restaurant in Hawaii, at least on this island where Waikiki was at, and it was not great. We went to this Japanese udon restaurant that was so popular that if you didn't get there first thing in the morning, the line was so long that if you got there late, they would close before they finished the entire line. Because they were only open a limited amount of time. We got there super early. We ended up having breakfast, and man, it was delicious. We got there before the line was really long, and when we left, like, there was a limit on the amount of time you could sit inside the restaurant. You could only sit for like 20 minutes or less. You had to eat your food and then leave, because that's how busy they were. So it was ridiculous. And I ate at a couple of Jimmy Buffett restaurants, had some great, fantastic drinks. Oh, my goodness. Some of the drinks. And it was a good time. The wedding was there. Went to one of those touristy luau things, which I was fully sick at the time, and I didn't appreciate it at all, and I was in a grouchy mood, and I hated it. I had this rant about touristy stuff, and we had to ride the party bus back to the hotel. It was one of those vans that had the poles in it, and it had music blaring and a disco ball. It was so loud, and I had such a headache, and I was so sick. Some parts of that trip were a nightmare. I will say that. But other parts were great. I'm glad I went. And, we had 2 flights out, and the second one was so long. Like, the first one was from Ohio to Seattle, Tacoma, SeaTac Airport, and then from SeaTac to Hawaii. And on the way back, we came back from Hawaii to SeaTac to something. I think it was Indiana, maybe? I don't remember. Michigan? Detroit, maybe. It might have been Detroit. It was Hawaii to SeaTac to Detroit, and from there it was a short trip to Ohio. But there were so many planes involved, so much time sitting on the plane. Oh my gosh. But it was a worthwhile trip. I'm glad I went. Do I ever want to go again? I don't know. It's so much. It's so much money to go, and it's so much time to get there and to come back. Like, oh, it's a bit of a nightmare logistically. But once you're out there, as long as you're not sick, it's pretty good. We had a good hotel, we had good food, we had good times, other than being sick. Got to see the aquarium, got to see all kinds of sights. It's an interesting place. And like I said, we only went to the touristy area. We were in Waikiki, so we didn't go to the Big Island. We didn't go to the various other places, but still. And that is the last time I went on a trip of that magnitude that I remember. I've been to other places. I've been to West Virginia. I've been to Kentucky. But I haven't considered any of that vacation, per se. It's just been like for a day or two, that kind of thing. It's not been a week-long experience. And I don't know how many more vacations I have in me. I don't like traveling so much anymore. I'm very much a homebody. I like the comforts of being able to come home, get in my fridge, get some food, get a drink, sleep in my own bed rather than a hotel, not have to go camping. And I've been camping multiple times and I've liked it, but I like being home. And maybe it's just my age, or maybe it's just the way my preferences have been. So I don't know how many more vacations I have left in me, if I'm being honest. But we'll see. You never know. I could revisit this episode in another 5 years or so and be like, I've been so many places, let me tell you about them. I don't know. I don't like to travel anymore. It's just how I've grown to be. I'm not. I want my comforts that I have here at home without having to spend extra money, without having to spend extra time or to drive someplace. I like to be able to just have access to everything. I don't know. I've gone soft and selfish in my age, I guess. And I don't particularly mind. I mean, some people would say that as like, hey, that's not that good, but I don't really care. Traveling and going all across the world, that's a younger person's thing. And I know people who do that. I know people who make it a point to go and travel all over the place. And if that makes them happy, if that makes them fulfilled, you know what? By all means, you do that. If that's what's right for you, you continue. I don't think it's right for me. I think I'm meant to just pick a spot, put my stake in the ground, my flag on the roof, and just say, hey, this is it. This is where I will be for all eternity at this point. But that's it. That's my vacation history. That's all the different things I've done that I remember. I'm sure there's been more, but that's what I remember. What do you think? Have you been on vacation? Do you still go on vacations? How do you feel about it as a concept? Do you enjoy it? Do you like traveling? Let me know. Drop a comment either on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you might have seen this episode. I mean, it's all sorts of places, and I'm sure most of those places offer comments. Tell me all about it. I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about your experience. And if you have anything to say about what I have done, by all means, tell me about it. I will listen. I will read it eloquently. I don't know what the next episode is going to be. I have not decided yet. I had this one decided before I did the last episode, so the last two episodes were actually well in advance, which is pretty unique for me. But we'll see where it goes from here. I know there's some modern things people have been wanting me to talk about. There's been developments in the world that people have been clamoring for me to comment on, which is pretty wild. I've never been in a position before where people are like, I want to hear what your opinion is. What do you think about this? And it's more than one person that I know. It's a bunch of people. So, which I'm grateful for. I'm grateful to be acknowledged and to be asked and to be in a position where I'm a kind of a cultural icon in your life, I guess. I don't know. I think that's putting too much importance on it. Building up my ego a little bit too much. But I appreciate everybody who are interested in what I have to say and want to hear more. And I don't know if you can hear the kittens running in the background. They're going crazy right now. But that's it for now. I know this episode was late. I appreciate your patience. And we will see what happens next time. Thank you so much. Have a good night.